We go now to Vince Coglianese, Editorial Director at the Daily Caller. Vince, welcome back to the show. What do you make of the decision by Tim Scott to enter the race for the White House in 2024? And how is his record on pro-life and religious freedom issues?
Well, that actually, interestingly, in his announcement today from Charleston, South Carolina, he emphasized religious liberty. It was one of the big talking points and applause points during his remarks today. So religious liberty and his pro-life attitudes are going to be a big feature, I think, of his candidacy. He is an interesting guy jumping into the field. At the moment, he's polling in the low single digits in terms of where people's loyalties lie in the Republican primary. But as you know, that could change now that he's officially a candidate.
Is he one of just many others who have also championed school choice? I know that that's something that Democrats have recently started to lean into.
Yeah, Tim Scott has a lot of respect for families and parents and school choice, and that has been. And I think Tim Scott's going to have to figure out a way to differentiate himself from the field in general, because I think a lot of the Republican candidates are of one mind on these issues. But we'll see. We'll see if he can do it. He's a talented politician. He's been in the United States Senate for a decade now, and he could have a big place on that debate stage this fall.
Any chance that race relations will be one way that he might differentiate himself?
It's possible. I mean, I think you're already kind of seeing some of the left-wing attacks coming in against Tim Scott, and this acknowledgement that he is a black candidate from South Carolina, but we'll see what he does with that. He's always, I think, tried to distinguish himself that, yes, I'm a black American. Yes, he came up from a poor upbringing in Charleston, South Carolina. But beyond that, he's trying to overcome this idea that his identity is the most important thing about him. Even in his remarks today, he was pushing back on the idea that America is in any way a racist nation. And he also said that we shouldn't be canceling the founding fathers. We should be celebrating them.
Well, that'll be something to watch. Another Republican, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, is expected to announce his candidacy this week. Over the weekend, the NAACP issued a travel advisory for Florida, calling the governor's policies, quote, openly hostile toward African Americans and LGBTQ plus individuals. What did you make of this?
Well, actually, I thought the NAACP statement was kind of goofy. They issued a travel advisory like Florida is somehow dangerous to people to visit. It's not dangerous in the least. It's a wonderful state. And it's actually kind of a sad commentary on the state of politics in the United States that an interest group would come out and say something like that. The NAACP is very aligned with the Democratic Party, so it's a partisan hit ultimately on Ron DeSantis. As far as black Americans are concerned, Florida, I believe, is one of the most, if not the most successful place in the country for black Americans to start and operate a business. They're thriving in Florida. So I think this idea that the NAACP used, its status in order to come in and issue a, quote, travel advisory for Florida, it's silly and it diminishes the NAACP.
It does show an intersectionality between race relations and LGBTQ relations, which is something that we've seen more and more over the years. Well, let's talk quickly about the debt ceiling. More meetings today between the President Biden and Speaker McCarthy. How do you see this playing out?
I think they're going to raise the debt ceiling, and I think that there are going to be some spending cuts on the table, at the very least, starting with clawing back some of the unspent COVID money, which I think all Americans would probably agree is a good idea. If it's not being spent, then pull it back and pay off some of our debt. But we'll see. I mean, right now, you do have Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden meeting. That's after Biden has just come back from Japan. So it's going to be a very important meeting. We'll see. I don't think it's that high stakes. I really do think that they're going to lift this debt ceiling. Joe Biden has suggested that he may invoke the 14th Amendment, a novel legal theory, to basically ignore the debt ceiling. There's very few people who think that's actually a good idea, and that includes his Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, who has now said repeatedly that this is not the kind of thing to play around with, especially with such short notice.
Thanks so much. Vince Coglianese, Editorial Director at the Daily Caller.
Thanks so much.